Your shadow hits you where it hurts. What I mean by this, let's say you struggle with something like binge drinking, or you struggle with something like porn, or a gambling addiction, whatever vice is your sticking point. There's a lot of people who try to solve the vice, and I've fallen into this camp myself, with conscious mind identity shifting. So they'll start trying to reprogram the conscious mind by shifting their identity. And so they'll affirm things to themselves, let's say in the mirror, something to the effect of, I am not someone who watches porn. I am not someone who drinks alcohol. I am not someone who enjoys gambling. And they try to affirm themselves in that direction. And that might work temporarily, but inevitably what's going to happen is they're going to relapse. Or there's going to be some major emotional stressor in their life, or some significant situation or weighty thing is going to happen, going to derail them, spiral them off, and then they're right back into the same vice and addiction again. And the reason for this is because your shadow hits you where it knows it can get to you. It's why, like, if you have let's say you've got a drinking problem, if you get into a stressful situation, you're not all of a sudden just going to become like necessarily a Netflix addict, or you're going to start getting into gambling or something like this. Your shadow hits you in the ways that you are most vulnerable. And it's why I've never found making these identity shifts or chanting affirmations or mantras to myself to really do anything. They might temporarily alleviate, or maybe as a bit of a placebo effect if I feel like I'm doing something productive and I'm putting myself on a better track, and I might be on that track for a bit. But it's not solving the underlying root of, why do I have this vice or an addiction in the first place? This vice is representing something that's missing in my life. So, for example, when I was younger, when I was a teen, I played a ton of World of Warcraft. A ton of World of Warcraft. Just, yeah. The reason why I was so attracted to World of Warcraft it was high school, yeah, it was my high school years, was because I was developmentally late to the puberty scene. So I was much smaller and developmentally behind all of the other boys. And so I didn't feel like I was attractive to women, which I wasn't. And I didn't feel like I could compete with the other guys, at least not physically. And I was worried that if I was intellectually astute and I said things that did not go over well, they could kick my ass. So I was kind of felt like at the bottom of the social hierarchy. And I lacked social connection, and I lacked kind of like a meaningful purpose for that phase of my life. So something like World of Warcraft is unbelievably attractive because social connection, it's a massive multiplayer game online with other people. And it gives you meaningful purpose because you're leveling up your character and you're getting better gear and you're beating bosses and you're doing all this stuff. And that's why it was appealing, because it was filling two major voids that I had in my life. Actually, three, because I felt powerless as an individual. So I could be powerful in the game. I could level myself up and get really good. I could beat other players. I could be very powerful. So there was a power element to this. There was a social connection element to this. There was a meaningful progression of, I'm leveling something up, because I feel like I'm very stagnant in my life at this phase. Now, I recognize, like, dude, I probably play way too much World of Warcraft. This is not great for me. I recognize that even when I was 15, 16 years old. No amount of standing in front of the mirror and chanting my affirmations was going to change anything. There is no, like, you know what, I'm just not someone who plays World of Warcraft. I'm not someone who plays World of Warcraft anymore. That was not ever going to shift the problem. Because the problem existed because it's trying to fill something that is a hole. And yes, it's filling something with something that's not ideal. Really, it should have been like, well, how do I get involved in maybe a martial art, or get into lifting weights sooner, or make some more friends, or find something that is actually going to like light me up that I want to progress on. But I didn't know how to do that at the time. So World of Warcraft was filling that gap. But no amount of trying to shift my identity of, I'm not someone who plays World of Warcraft, would have done anything, because it was filling a void. And it's the same thing for you if you're experiencing something like binge drinking, porn, gambling, whatever that might be. That is your psyche trying to fill a void. It's doing it dysfunctionally. It's not doing it with the healthiest coping mechanism, and ideally we find a way to replace this with something better. But my point is that it's filling something, and your shadow knows how to hit you. It hits you where it hurts. Yeah, that's why you're probably not necessarily going to change a vice. You're going to stick with a particular vice because that vice represents something that's missing in your life. For someone who's porn addiction, let's say, there's probably something that's not integrated with your sexuality. Whether you're not actually having like the kind of intimacy you want with another person, that's probably likely. Or there's something about your own sexuality that you haven't realized yet. And so the porn is trying to like, hey, pay attention to this because this is what you'd actually be attracted to. But you're not willing to face that because you pushed it into your shadow. It hits you where it hurts. And so when you're looking at your addictions and your vices, not only would solving them rocket your life up better than basically anything else you could possibly do, but you look at them and you realize that these are representations of what I am, what holes I have in my life. The reason why I have a porn addiction is because I'm not having the kind of intimacy I would like to have, or I'm not admitting something about what I'm attracted to. The reason why I have a video game addiction is because I'm not progressing on something that's deeply meaningful and fulfilling to me in a way that's social with other people. The reason why I have an alcohol addiction is because I'm not dealing with the existential dread and meaninglessness of my career that I feel, so I just black myself out so I don't have to feel anything at all. The reason why I have a marijuana addiction is because I'm continually trying to like blast open the floodgates and gain all these esoteric insights because I'm afraid of actually groundedly and embodying practice these into real life. Whatever way it looks like. But this is your thing. When you figure out, take a look at what are your vices, because this is going to be like where the meat of a lot of shadow work is you take a look at what are your addictions, what are your vices, what's pulling you in a particular direction, and start asking yourself. One thing you can do is play the why game with yourself. Why am I watching porn? Well, because it's enjoyable. Why do I find that enjoyable? Well, because it's very attractive in this way. Why is it attractive in that way? Because it's fantastical. Why is it fantastical? Because I don't feel like I could get this in real life. Because I don't feel like I could meet people like this in real life. Because I don't feel like I can have these experiences in real life. Because I'm ashamed of these experiences in real life. Because I'm ashamed of who I am and my attractions to this in the first place. Because I'm ashamed of who I am. Why? You get back to the root of that. Now you know what the root of the dysfunction is. Now you know what the origination point is. And until you get to that root and you solve that origination point, you haven't solved the problem. And so you could identity shift all you want, affirmations all yourself all you want. What's going to happen is at some point you're going to be under the weight of a responsibility, an emotionally stressful situation, and you're going to go back to your old coping mechanisms because the root of I'm ashamed of who I am, let's say if that was the example, that's still there. And until you address that at the root, it's going to keep coming up that way. And maybe the reason why it uses porn or video games or a particular outlet is because that's just what you are most psychologically, physiologically susceptible to. That's just your particular weak spot. And your shadow knows to hit you there. You're like, oh, you don't care about gambling? I'm not going to pull you towards a gambling addiction. I can hit you in your sexuality. I can hit you in your addictive video game tendencies. I can hit you with alcohol. It knows where to hit you. Because your shadow is you and it knows you. So, moral with this one is play the why game with yourself. Get down to what is the root. What is the root? That's the main thing you have to go for. When you can identify that, you can start addressing that. Now you can fill the void that it's trying to fill on its own, but you can do so with something that's far more empowering and productive for you.